The Dragons opened the final with old-timers Beattie and Walford combining. The Knights hit back through Hagan and McCormick. And they hit the lead with Gordon and Doyle teaming up. Back came the Dragons with a super try. "12 all at the break and 14 weary troops took to Parramatta Stadium for the final 10 minutes, and it was former rugby international Scott Goulet who laid on a brilliant four-pointer for the Dragons. And with 5 minutes to go, the Dragons looked to have it wrapped up. Never Say Die and John Schuster hit back for the Blue and Reds. With 20 seconds left in the match, the Knights still had a chance and the crowd went wild as Glanville levelled the scores. "22 all, the siren had sounded and it was up to Flash Gordon.
First of all, take my time and burn up the time on the clock. Then to get my breath back because I was feeling pretty tired. And once I got back to the mark, I was looking for the most level piece of ground I could find and just say to myself, it's got to go over because another 10 minutes really, we don't know how the game would have went.
Mark Glanville was named player of the series with 5 tries and his vital series-saving try was a gamble.
Well, yeah, I was in two minds as whether to throw it out or go myself, but I thought I might as well take the opportunity and luckily it paid off.
Their first trophy and $70,000. What a way to start season 1991.
Dr. Tierney was bound for the nation's capital today and a swearing-in ceremony that will see him become the first Newcastle-based senator in more than 30 years.
It's a very difficult road to come into the Senate. There's 28 contenders and there's very few vacancies ever come up. And I'm quite delighted with the result. I think it's a great thing for Newcastle.
There were signs of celebration in the Tierney household, but the phone was also running hot, and the Liberal Party's new parliamentary recruit knows he'll have to produce the goods if he's to serve more than one term. Not surprisingly, the Newcastle University lecturer has nominated education as his first target.
One of the great things about the Senate is that you have the chance to specialise in particular things. One of the things I'd be specialising in would be looking at higher education. We are traditionally underrepresented in this area. We do not have enough places, so pushing for the expansion of higher education would be one thing.
Dr. Tierney will be officially sworn in tomorrow afternoon. Bruce Mackenzie, NBN News.
The fire broke out in the Bonnell Road shed just before midday. The Bug Factory converts Volkswagen Beetles into soft-top sports sedans. The big problem for firemen were magnesium car parts, which were stored on a mezzanine floor near the factory office. These exploded in the heat of the fire, creating hazardous conditions for the 23 firemen called to battle the blaze. The fire scorched a hole in the building's roof, with firemen using a ladder hoist to gain the upper hand. Workers and firemen managed to save all the cars inside, but the front of the building suffered major damage. The Fire Investigation Unit is looking into the cause of the fire, but at this stage there are no suspicious circumstances. The grain terminal at Carrington is one of 2 export facilities in New South Wales. The Greiner government changed the structure of grain handling from an authority to a corporation 12 months ago in a bid to get the operation to pay its own way. Despite a small crop, the Grain Corporation believes it's performed well in its new commercial role. Now the state government is planning to go the next step and privatise the corporation. Advertisements calling for expressions of interest in buying the business will appear next month. There are strong indications that grain growers may be among the parties interested in taking a stake, although GrainCorp is not ruling out the sale of the business to a number of shareholders. Negotiations should be completed by September.
Christopher Robert Sharp is a 3-kilogram ball of impatience. The ambulance called to drive his mother Tracy to the John Hunter Hospital this morning travelled just 300 metres before the youngster made a surprise entrance into the world.
We just decided it wanted to come and so we got the ambulance and had it in the ambulance on the way. And wasn't going to wait. That's it.
Proud father Jeffrey was also caught by surprise.
We only got up to the end of the street and then heard it scream.
Ambulance officers Charlie Pitt and Karen Boyd were being hailed as heroes for their part in the delivery, but both insist it was Mother Tracy and Mother Nature who did all the hard work.
The baby and Mum did it all. It was all over before I could do anything.
Mother and son are both doing well, and big sister Carissa just can't wait until her new playmate comes home.
The $250 million John Hunter Hospital was officially opened on January 30. Premier Greiner was there, so was his deputy Wal Murray and Health Minister Collins. More than 1,100 invited guests enjoyed a buffet lunch after the speeches, and each was presented with an expensive medallion to mark the occasion. The opposition's Waste Watch Committee estimates the day cost $60,000, claiming this was waste on a massive scale.
Quite clearly, this is a government that has loads of money to waste, loads of money for wasting on public relations, on advertising, on overseas trips, on expensive part-time jobs for the Premier's wife.
The opposition also questioned the cost of a glossy coffee table book presented to the guests on the day at a time when other government departments are being told to tighten their belts.
At a time when they aren't prepared to put the money into the capital works at Maitland Hospital in the Hunter, when the waiting lists for people waiting to get into hospital in New South Wales has increased by 500 over the last 12 months, when they're not prepared to provide a polyclinic in the west of the Lakes area in the Hunter.
The Hunter Area Health Service says the opposition has got its figures wrong. Dr Owen James says the meal was catered by the lowest tender and the books and medallions were appropriate for the occasion.
The organising committee thought that was an appropriate way to mark this once in 25 years occasion. We don't think that there was any gross waste. We don't think that there was any appropriate expenditure.
Dr James says finishing the John Hunter Hospital 18 months ahead of schedule saved the taxpayer $10 million, and the cost of the opening ceremony was the same as running Newcastle's newest hospital for just 2 hours. John Church, NBN News.
The skiff paced out a harbour course that will provide the best vantage points for spectators on shore. One 18-footer is a spectacle on its own, with extended bowsprit and raking mast to maximise sail area and control. It's a racing thoroughbred, the bow section nothing more than a blade to slice the water, the hull a slick planing surface capable of speeds up to 50 kilometres an hour. Most of the time the crew isn't in the boat, but clinging to outriggers to keep it upright. A lightning bolt insignia on the mainsail of this boat hinted at the identity of a special passenger, Newcastle Knights flash Ashley Gordon. At first it looked like he'd be happier facing a charging front row forward than to take to the trapeze, but it wasn't long before the brave knight was out with the best of them.
How is it, Ashley? Scary at first, but it's alright now.
At least 8 of the sponsored and professionally crewed skiffs will compete in the deciding leg of a national summer tour on the harbour from the 22nd to the 24th of February.
The Commonwealth Bank moved on Carrington slipways just before Christmas. It appointed an agent to sell the business and try and recover more than $20 million in debts. Since then, the workforce has been completing the 8,000-tonne Sea Road Tamar for ANL under a special leasing arrangement. But as that project comes to an end, so do many of the jobs at the troubled shipyard. Manuel Alves has spent the past 4 weeks investigating the feasibility of buying the Tomago shipbuilder. He says specialist contractors have pledged $250,000 to support his bid, but much more is needed.
My estimate in those bases is that we would be suggesting, and there's only a suggested offer for the assets of $6 million. We'll also be looking for some $3 million for working capital to get the business going, as we have identified that for the first few months there will be some negative cash flow.
Mr Alves says there's been no interest from public companies distracted with their own problems. He's chasing private finance, but admits it would take 3 years to show a return on the investment. A decision on a major ferry contract for Bangladesh will be made at the end of this month, so time is running out.
Because of the urgency, we're looking for money now, not money committed down the line.
Meanwhile, the receiver today paid the workforce wages outstanding up to December 21, along with all the deductions applicable for that month. Annual leave and long service entitlements have yet to be honoured and depend on the receiver recovering money in dispute from Carrington's debtors. John Church, NBN News.
Two weeks ago, Trades Hall Council placed a ban on the removal of the demountable from Hamilton South Public. It was to go to Trundle Central School in the central west of the state, but parents claim it's needed at Hamilton South for after-hours childcare. Yesterday, Trades Hall labelled the department as petulant and petty, claiming there were demountables elsewhere in the region which could be sent instead.
There is demountables around the area. I mean, the state dockyard still has equipment over there and still has a facility which is producing demountables for a range of government instrumentalities. And there is demountables over there, and there's also demountables out at the Public Works Department at Wallsend.
Today, the Education Department had their say.
Well, I'd love to take people around to see those demountables. In the case of the ones at the dockyard, they were burnt out, and that's the condition they're in, and they're there for repair. The demountables at Wallsend are demountable toilets, and I'd hate to think we would be putting children into demountable toilets for after-school group. And the others that are there are frames, and they're genuinely there for repair.
According to Allenby, the unions are ill-informed as there is a major shortage of demountable classrooms in the state. At least 10 modules are still needed, one in the Hunter region. On top of that, Ties Hill TAFE has requested around 25 demountables as soon as possible so that earthquake repairs can begin.
A request we've just had from the Newcastle TAFE College will be met if we have some to spare. So there's no way that in this state at the moment we have one spare demountable.
The department still believes it can solve the matter and will meet parents from Hamilton South tomorrow night. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
The 22-kilometre stretch of highway between Bulladila and Kalungaluk has seen its fair share of tragedy. In the past 4.5 years, there have been 285 accidents. 14 people lost their lives. The stretch includes 2 treacherous black spots, O'Sullivan's Gap and Wootton Bends. Accident figures here are between 2 and 3 times greater than in adjacent sections of the highway. Today it was announced an eastern route has been chosen for the $100 million deviation, which allows for a link to the Lakes Way. The new section will be a divided 4-lane carriageway that includes 2 major bridges. Already work has begun on a route survey to determine boundaries and land acquisition, but funding could still be some way off. It will not be considered by the state government until the next financial year.
From today, the Roxburgh Consortium can carry out exploration and environmental studies to assess the feasibility of mining the Bengala coal development at Muswellbrook. The consortium, headed by Costain Australia, won the rights to mine the designated area from 6 other companies in December after submitting a $250 million proposal.
They're concerned for the environment, they're guaranteeing of markets, and the numbers of overseas well-established groups that are here as equity holders within it.
Roxburgh estimates it will be 1997 before mining begins on the site. Around 4.5 million tonnes a year will be exported to the Asia-Pacific region, helping to meet an expected surge in the demand for Australian steaming coal. In fact, purchase of the coal overseas is guaranteed, with 2 big buyers part of the consortium.
Well, we're reasonably confident with regard to steaming coal, and it's interesting that a number of potential customers have wanted to join with us in this project, which shows their confidence. And of course what we look at is the construction of power stations, and we see them being built, and that gives us the confidence that there's going to be the demand for our coal.
Although it's still early days, Roxburgh realises some residents and landowners may be concerned by how close the mine is to the town. An office will be set up in Muswellbrook to liaise with the community.
It's about 3 or 4 kilometres from Muswellbrook, but yes, we're going to take every concern we can on environmental issues to minimise any impact on the town.
Everyone loves a lover, and every lover loves February 14th. It's the one day of the year there's an open door on sentiment, and across the region, red-blooded Australians were making the most of it. Of course, as with every Valentine's Day, flowers, in particular red roses, were in hot demand, men and women both deciding to forgo originality for the tried and true methods of saying, "I love you." But while some preferred to leave the words to others, there were many who elected to give their cards a more personal touch, with this calligraphy stand at one Newcastle store kept busy. For one romantic, however, there just wasn't enough room on a piece of paper to say it all. Instead, he or she opted for the wide open skies to get their message across. Clearly someone's phone's going to be running hot tonight. But while some went for expense and others for good old-fashioned romance, there were still more willing to seal the relationship with a kiss, or at least that was the original idea when the Market Square shopping centre in Newcastle arranged its Valentine's Day kissing competition. But with a weekend at Pepper's Resort on the offer, the participants decided it was no holes barred, and a simple peck turned out to be much, much more. But if there was the ultimate St Valentine's Day gift, then it would have to belong to Mark and Sue Smith, the Newcastle couple who this morning became proud parents of twins. Nicholas and Amelia were the first twins born at the new John Hunter Hospital, and can be assured, no matter what, every time they celebrate their birthdays, there'll be no shortage of love in the air.
$240 youngsters ranging from 5 to 17 years of age are taking advantage of the 2-day training camp to glean every tip from the record breakers that they can. The AMP clinics have become so popular that some 180 swimmers were turned away. The day began on dry land, with Kieran enthralling the kids and also the mums and dads with his sensational swim at the recent World Championships in Perth. He broke the race down in stages, and then a hush descended as the dramatic finish took place. While the world applauded his magical silver medal, it wasn't long before he was back at work, and teaching swimming is something he enjoys.
It's good coming out to these sort of things, just the kids really enjoy it and we all have a great time, so no, it's a lot of fun.
How do you find the response from the kids?
Oh, great. I mean, they're really excited about getting to meet me and Tracy and things like that. I mean, I suppose for me it feels a bit funny, but no, they really love it. They really enjoy themselves.
Now in their second year, the AMP clinics are starting to show encouraging signs, with many clubs supplying feedback as to its successes.
It's great to know that they've said, you know, and it's thanks to you, Tracy, for the kids, for their motivation. So it just gives me a buzz to know that they've done well out of us being here today.
The Newcastle and District Meals on Wheels operates 11 kitchens, between them preparing and delivering up to 1,000 hot dinners a week. Running costs come from a 75-cent charge to recipients and a $2 a meal subsidy from the government. The rest comes from a volunteer workforce whose numbers are dwindling. Organisers stress that people need only help as seldomly as once a month.
For the cooking of the meals, we have the people come in from about 8 o'clock in the morning till about 11:30. They prepare the meals, get them served up ready for delivery, and then about 11 o'clock we have drivers come in with their cars and an off-sider, and they pick up the meals, take them round, deliver them, then come back and wash up their dishes after they're finished.
While the service's traditional volunteer labour force of women with some spare time in the middle of the day is drying up, Tom Griffith says there are many other people, including men, who could help.
Well, a lot of people who have taken early retirement could do this type of work. A lot of people who could work on their roster days once a fortnight or even once a month if it's necessary. There's probably a lot of lonely people out there who have spare time, who could come in a couple of hours a fortnight, and these are the sort of people we want to get to know.
Meals on Wheels is attempting to serve everyone who approaches it by reducing the number of runs but increasing their size. The service fears it may have to start up a waiting list for recipients if the situation gets any worse. If you can help, the numbers of the various Meals on Wheels kitchens are listed on page 275 of the telephone book.
The Pillar training program is the most ambitious of its type in the state. It's designed to put Aboriginal people back in touch with land conservation and management. The program was given a symbolic launch today. Initially, 12 farmhands will be trained in the eradication of noxious plants such as prickly pear and Bathurst burr, as well as feral animals, on the Soil Conservation Service's 7,500 hectare holding at the headwaters of Glenbourne Dam. The trainees will also learn business and farm management skills and are expected to organise themselves into a self-sufficient commercial enterprise. 7 government departments have provided more than $500,000 for the project and want to see it become more than a one-off exercise.
What we're looking at is part of a long-term program for land care and land management across all Australia. Those sorts of programs are certainly not flash-in-the-pan programs.
The trainees feel they have something to prove for themselves and for their people.
Everyone gets a break in their life, and this is one of the breaks for me, and I think I'm going to give it my best shot.
Having work for a few years to come and being able to pull something through for the Aboriginal side of things, which I think is a good thing. It'll be able to prove something to people.
The local Wonnarua Aboriginal Land Council welcomes the project and the employment it brings, but also sees it as a tangible link between Aboriginal people and the land.